welcome to Turn the Page, the official podcast of the Syosset Public Library.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Turn the Page. I'm your host today, Jen, and today I am joined by the author of an absolutely gorgeous work, a genre-bending work that has such highs and lows emotionally, psychologically, sort of ontologically, so much stuff going on, and that is so fascinating, and I am so excited to talk about it. So welcome to the show. Could I ask you to introduce yourself and your book, please?
Hi, I'm John Chu. No, it's kind of funny because I always start with I'm a short fiction writer, but this is a novel. So this is so The Subtle Art of Folding Space is my first novel. See, I hate saying this because it sounds so conceited, but it is literally true. I'm an award-winning short fiction writer. So I have won a Hugo, I've won a Nebula, I've won a Locus, and I've won a Nick Knight. And The Subtle Art of Folding Space was me trying to figure out whether or not I could write a novel. So, and God, I'm really bad at introductions. I mean, like what I have on my website is that I'm a microprocessor architect by day and a writer, translator, podcast narrator by night, and then that's probably a nice way of putting it. Like I have a day job, and then I also have this. Um,
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, you wear so many interesting hats, and I am so interested in all of the way that you kind of see those hats, I guess not being worn at the same time, but maybe ha perhaps being switched on and off in the course of writing this novel. There are so many interesting topics and family dynamics and speculative ideas that all come together here. Before we talk about the novel itself too much, could you tell us a little bit more about your career and your journey as a writer, and perhaps the shorter work that you did leading up to this?
okay. I'm one of those people who I joke that I was raised by librarians because I mean part of it is that I don't want to get in too deep in terms of in terms of race and class in the United States, but the upshot is that when my parents emigrated to this country, both very intelligent, both very professional people, but the thing that they could do to make a living was to own and operate a Chinese restaurant. The China's again for complicated reasons that we don't need to go into. Americans expect their Chinese restaurants to be really cheap. I mean, like they want good food, but they want good food at this ridiculously low price point. So there is like no margin, which means that which means my parents were always at work. Um, and then what that meant was that I spent a lot of time in libraries. And you know, I mean, to some extent, the intentional thing on my parents' part was they wanted to cultivate this love of reading and this love of books in me, and I think they succeeded in ways that they could not really have ever imagined. So weirdly enough, I was always a kid who read, and I was always a kid who wrote. Like fortunately these stories no longer exist, but like I was writing at the age of 7. I
Mm.
mean, keep in mind that I started learning English at the age of 6. So these were not good stories, but I was writing them, and I have like oddly enough, and I don't know if this is like a created memory or if this actually happened, but I do in fact have memories of people telling me, well, no, this is not the way the world works. So it's pretty clear that, I mean, I didn't have the language for that at the time, but it was pretty clear I was writing like in sort of this fantasy, science fiction-y, certainly like 7-year-old me did not have the word mimetic, but like clearly I was not writing mimetic fiction. Not that you would I mean not that you would expect a 7-year-old to write about, I don't know, you know you know like I'm sure I was writing about 7-year-old things, and then none of them were particularly realistic. So that was sort of a thing that I was always kind of doing. It never occurred to me that this was a thing that I could do for that other people could read. Like I was always writing for myself, and it never occurred to me that this was something that I could do, and perhaps other people might want to read it until much later. We're going to like flip like decades now. Much later until I read The Stories of Your Life by Ted Chiang. Not that I thought I would ever be on that level, and believe me, I am not on that level. I would love to be on the Ted Chiang level, like that is an aspiration. But reading that did sort of make me think, oh, okay, like getting that maybe getting published is a thing that I could do, and then for me the obvious thing with short fiction, because a lot, like I have the attention span of like a baguette. So most of what I was reading when I was like, say, 10, I know actually it's weird because I was going to say most of what I was reading when I was like 10 were like year's best collections. And on one hand, that's true. But I was also, I mean, not when I was 10, but like when I was like 12, like like my sixth grade teacher pushed me into Lord of the Rings,
Mm.
which um which was probably a good move on her part. But so I was reading like these very short works, and obviously this very like epic thing, and like Dune was like a year or two after that. So but a lot of what but a lot of what I was reading was short fiction. And then I think, but like I said, it wasn't really until like I got to Ted Chiang that I thought, oh, this is the thing that I can do. Not necessarily in the terms of the mechanics of writing, because I had been writing all along. But I should point out that I am very happy that none of these stories exist anymore. They have all been like they have all been just they are unrecoverable, which is a fact that makes me very happy. But so I'm not saying that I was writing well. I was writing. But at that point, that was the point where I thought, oh, okay, this is the thing that I enjoy doing, and then maybe I can do it well enough that somebody else may want to read it.
Very nice. And I am particularly curious about what you might think your work as a translator perhaps contributed to your development as a writer. And if, because I understand that this novel is adapted from a shorter story, is that correct? Or
Yes.
yeah, is that a different type of translation, or was that a new sort of challenge for you?
Okay. Okay. I- The way that translation has affected my writing is that it sort of it forced me to develop skills that I'm sure you can develop in other ways, but the way that I developed it was through translation. Because what you are trying to do when you translate is you are trying to create the same affect in my case an English language reader's mind that the Chinese language reader's mind has, and the affect that they have when they read the original story. So, the things I don't remember which story is it now, but there was a story that I had to translate where each section was written in a different style, like they were pastiching various styles. So what I had to do for the, well, I guess I didn't have to, but I really wanted to, for the English translation was to find equivalent styles and pastiche those. And, so one section so one section, the writing style was deliberately very spare and very laconic. So I was like, okay, I'm going to do my best Raymond Carver. I mean, I'm not saying that I succeeded, but I tried. So for me, it made me very aware of. Patrick Nielsen Hayden says that there are no such things as synonyms, and it made me very aware of those sorts of things. Like it made me very aware of precisely how I was structuring my sentences, not necessarily because I wanted to imitate, not necessarily because I wanted to copy the structure of the original Chinese sentence, which, by the way, if anyone cares, is invariably a bad idea. The grammar is just too different.
Mm.
But but it made me very aware of the structure of sentences and okay, well, how do I structure the sentence to create the same affect? So it was incredibly useful in terms of these micro level things because like the macro level stuff the original writer has already done for me like the plot is the plot like I'm not I mean I can't change the plot you know
Yeah.
like that's like the macro structure is already done and then like that is not changing but all the little micro details that support that structure ends up being very different because these are two very different languages.
Mm.
So that was part one. Part two, yes, the Total Art of Folding Space is based on a short story that was published at it's now Reactor Mag called Hold Time Violations, and I guess here I'm going to reference something that Mary Robinette Kowal says a lot, which is that if a reader's reading a short story and they see something that's missing or they notice something that's not there, they will go, "Oh, well, it's a short story. It's outside the bounds of the story." Then they will just roll with it because it's a short story. It's something that has to land within, like, say, 4 or 5 or 6,000 words, and they'll just go on. You take that same text, and if it's part of a novel, um, readers will read it very differently. They will read that, they will notice something missing, and they will think, oh, the author didn't think of this, which like you like you don't want them to think that. So the thing is so there are a lot of things so for example, there are a lot of things that were left unsaid. And then they didn't need to be said in the short story that I needed to put into the parallel sections of the novel. I mean, but I should point out that I mean, it's based on the short story, but it's not like I took the short story and just dumped it into the novel.
Mm.
It's actually surprisingly different. Like one of my secret hopes is after I'm dead and a Sifil Grandmaster, I mean, obviously not in that order, but that my work is interesting enough and relevant enough that somebody will go and say compare the short story to like the first few chapters of the novel and basically see I mean and basically see what I did to expand things out. Because part of it is what I'd said before, which is that there are these things that the short story left implicit that really needed to be hit a bit harder. And and those first chapters needed to be more expansive because they had to because they were the opening because they were now the opening to like a 66,000 word work
Mm.
as opposed to the opening of actually it's kind of funny. I think that's kind of a coincidence. I think it's exactly 10 times longer. I mean, I didn't plan that. But the short story I think is about 6,600 words. No, I never that never occurred to me. I mean, it's a complete accident. Like I'm not that good at hitting word count. Um, but it had to do a different job. So and then so one of the things that I had to learn in the process of writing this novel, and this is like a case where I just cannot thank Jen Gunnels, my editor, and Eric Showers, my agent, enough, was they were both amazing at going through my manuscript and picking out the places where I was engaging in short story pacing where I was doing something that would have been perfectly fine if I were writing like 3 paragraphs of a short story, but it didn't. But for a novel, it needed to be more expansive. And then they were both amazing at helping me write the book that I wanted to write.
How much of that expansion is in world building? I'm curious. And what is your approach? I think it's so unique and fascinating here, the world building. And I am particularly interested in the role that food plays, both in the narrative and how you sort of explain the world.
So I am a trained improviser. I mean, the key word is trained. I didn't say good improviser. I am a trained. I have taken years of classes in improv, and the best thing that it's done for me is that a lot of my writing that informs a lot of how I do my writing. So the world building such, I mean, there are people who like they create the world, and then they write all of this stuff about the world, and then they set a story within it, and then that's their process, and that works really well for them, and that's so not what I do. Um, I mean, this world very much evolved sort of from the inside out. Like I had these characters, I discovered their relationships, and then through that I figured out the world in which to best tell that story. No, I mean, like I said, it's an interesting example because everybody talks about the food, and having like read my novel, I actually understand why. But honest to God, I did not realize how much food writing there was in this novel until like at some point well, because the thing about the book process is at some point you have to read your novel a lot because well obviously you're reading it while I mean because at some point it's output done in scare quotes, and and then you send it to your editor and the editor comes back with notes, but like at some point there's a copy editing process and there's a proofreading process, and then so you end up reading your novel a lot, and it really did not hit me until like copy edits. Like so fairly late in the process that, oh, there's a lot of food writing and I'm doing this food writing in ways that support my theme. Go me. Um but yeah, so the way the world was created was actually sort of very organic. It was, hey, I need the world to be this way to tell the story that I wanted to tell. And then it was the issue of making all the things that I needed cohere with each other so that it was like an actual world and not just a random bunch of things I needed.
Nice. That's super interesting, especially given the nature, I think, of that world and the sort of the way that the skunk works, which I love. I love reading that phrase. I love saying it out loud. It's a lot of fun and it's very evocative. How that works. I'm really curious. It feels like a lot of that draws perhaps on your engineering background, just sort of the way that roles are perhaps like delineated and distributed in this sort of cosmic system, if we want to call it. Um, but then the family dynamics are layered upon that in such an interesting way. Um, I totally lost the question in those observations, but do you want to talk about maybe how like the family dynamics and this world kind of interact for you?
Okay, sure. I mean, by the way, I always sort of throw in the caveat that although I have an older sister, and obviously I have cousins, like everybody has lots of cousins, like because there is this tendency to read fiction as biography, I
Mm.
always feel like I have to have put in the caveat that this genuinely is fiction. Like for example, my sister is not trying to kill me on a daily basis. Like pretty obvious example. But having said that, um a lot of that a lot of the inspiration for this novel had to do with me dealing like me dealing with the death of my mom, which by the way did not happen during grad school for me. So again, not biography, but a lot of but a lot of the feeling. I mean, like I said, it's kind of funny how you can sort of change all the details, but keep the feelings, and then keep the dilemmas. So when it came like my mom entered, this is weirdly heavy, but like my mom like my mom entered a coma and we knew she was not coming out of it, and like my sister and I, we both instantly recognized, nope, this is this is exactly what mom wants, is to die a dignified death. And then so we let her die. And then it's one of the rare things that we both instantly agreed on because we both knew that this was precisely what our mom wanted. Um, and then so the novel in a weird way is sort of an exploration of, well, what if we didn't agree? what if we went this whole other way? But a lot, but a lot of the feelings that I had at the time, and a lot of the dilemmas that we were running into at that time, sort of very much informed the dynamic of what was happening.
That is so interesting and so poignant. The way that sort of, the interpersonal dynamics of dealing with grief and this sort of, to call it sibling rivalry would be an understatement. Um, the way that that is layered on the kind of the cosmic aspects of it, because grief and those sorts of the generational trauma sort of elements too can feel cosmic in scope, when you are enduring them.
Um, yes, that and while I was dealing with my mom's death, all sorts of really wacky stuff. I mean, not this sort of wacky, but like real life wacky. All sorts of really wacky stuff was sort of happening in my life at exactly the same time. And then that was a thing that I wanted to explore, and that was a thing that I wanted to put in this novel, where what Ellie kind of wants to do is just to shut off from the world and go and grieve and heal. But what she kind of has to do is save the universe, because there's all of this bizarre stuff happening around her, and then like it is, and then she can't not do anything about it. By the way, but I always feel like at this point I have to add this book is actually a lot of fun to read.
It is, yeah.
It's not it's not all death and doom and gloom. Like that there's like it is also kind of light and funny and then there are jokes. So I also I mean and I do think that you kind of have to have both. Like you can't all be on one level. Like you kind of have to have like the jokes and then the wackiness, or otherwise the grief doesn't play, or vice versa for that matter.
Absolutely. And I mean, in my experience, that is kind of how it functions in real life. Like the experience of intense grief has often like thrown into like a sort of more absurd light, like the kind of casual funny things that happen during a day or miscommunications or just absurdities. It feels like, life becomes a roller coaster in some ways. And to imagine that also on like the level of the universe or universes is
Mhm.
not a hard leap, I think sometimes.
Yeah, but anyway, so that was sort of that was a lot of what I was getting at, was that so I feel like I can safely talk about this because this is basically the first couple of chapters. Is that our inciting incident is that she basically discovers this thing in the skunk works that is keeping her comatose mother alive. And then she sort of has to make and then she decides that, well, no, like this is not what her mother wants. Like she's absolutely certain of this, and so she dismantles the device and her mother dies. And then that's sort of what kicks things off. And and so it doesn't occur to her at the time, mostly because I mean she there's a lot happening in her life. Well, is that thing there for another reason? Like for me, that was the thing. Actually, if we're talking about the difference between the short story and the novel, the short story, that's where the short story lands. The short story is that decision that she
Mhm.
has to do this, and in the novel, the novel, that moment is the moment when everything expands out and explodes out.
Mhm. Yeah. And it's was really poignant to me, the sort of emotional fallout from that, and how that plays into the family dynamics. Ellie, I found incredibly sympathetic in this sort of the depiction of the way that making the right decision, along with a whole bunch of other factors in the relationship between Ellie and Chris, can make you a scapegoat, not just for an individual, but for maybe a family system in some ways. Um, and it made me reflect a lot about the ways in which so much of the way that like family members harm each other is all kind of, what's the phrase I'm looking for? Like misdirected, anger at somebody else, or all just like emotions not really going the way that they're supposed to. It's incredibly incredibly like the idea of like the underpinnings of the universe getting gunked up in sort of like engineering type terms.
Yes. And then this is a case where everybody thinks they're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
That Chris does what she does in large part because she loves her mother. Like she this is not lip service. She genuinely loves mom. And actually I think I actually literally write this at some point in the novel that she can't be angry at mom, but she can be angry at Ellie.
hmm hmm Yeah, absolutely. Chris really is like a wonderful balancing act of a character because Chris has to be monstrous towards Ellie, but can't be a monster outright, at all times. Like Chris she has to be at least you have to see where she's coming from at least, and that's a
Yes.
really fine line I think that you walk with her, that her choices are sometimes absolutely monstrous and not very fair and even deeply harmful, but have a source that you can identify and understand, at least to some degree. Yeah.
Yes, that was actually really hard. Jen, my editor, and I had all sorts of discussions on how to sort of thread the needle with Chris because as you said as you said, she can't just be a monster. That's not very interesting. And then people will like put the book down. And all and also it was crucial for me. It was crucial for the book that I think that Ellie has to believe that they can have a decent relationship, that they can that at least one where at least one where Chris is not constantly trying to kill her. And 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 then so I had to make sure that I presented Chris in a way such that you could kind of see where she was, such that at least you could see how someone might see where she was coming from, such that when Ellie says, "Well, no, we can have this relationship, we can." Like we can in fact be two sisters, like not necessarily two sisters who love each other, but we can in fact be two sisters. And then like she has to be able to say this and not sound delusional,
Yeah.
like you have to be able to believe that. And then so that was a thing that I worked really really hard on, and in part because I mean I will say you haven't read the end yet, but I mean I will say that I genuinely do not believe that she is a monster. I think she is, I mean I think she is misguided, and I think she is hurting. And I think that causes her to lash out in ways that are not great. But I did, but I think the novel is at least somewhat sympathetic to her, if only because we're in Ellie's point of view, and despite everything Chris has done to Ellie, Ellie still has a certain amount of empathy, and then an amount of sympathy towards her. And then that's sort of counterbalanced by Daniel. Basically up, Daniel. I don't know if we've mentioned Daniel, Ellie's cousin, who basic who and like they and basically Ellie and Daniel are they are basically off trying to solve the mystery of this book. And it's pretty clear that Ellie just no, sorry, it's pretty clear that Daniel just hates Chris. Like, and then so I did in fact, so I wanted that dynamic, that you have these two cousins who love each other kind of unconditionally, but like have this disagreement.
Mhm. I wish we had mentioned Danielle, and we will now because a wonderful character, plays a really interesting role both in the, sort of the cosmology of the world and how the universe is maintained and organized, and a really crucial role, I think, in this very complex family dynamic. It's a lot of plates that you keep spinning that are, complex emotional dynamics and just complicated cosmologies explained through like beautiful food metaphors and so many interesting descriptors of very, very agile descriptions of things that are inherently difficult to describe.
Mm.
Yeah. Do you think in your future there is another novel, or are you writing short fiction again? What is on your horizon?
I am in the middle of a novel right now. It's not a sequel to this, it's something else entirely.
Mm.
And again, for similar reasons, and again, for similar reasons, it's an expansion of a short story. It's an expansion of a short story that I wrote. Although here, you can, like in the subtle art of folding space, you can in fact see traces of the short story in the novel, and then here you like I would have to tell you because in the process of writing this novel, so much stuff got reworked, which I mean, which is fair because I'm telling a different story. I mean, just as Whole Time Violations is ultimately a different story than the Subtle Art of Folding Space, this novel will be, if I ever finish it, will be a different story than the short story on which that sort of that where I looked at it and I thought, well, like I've gotten to a point where I'm very conscious of the decisions that I'm making to make something land within a certain length.
Mm.
And then so one of the things I'm learning to do is go, okay, but what if I make like the decision that tells the best story? What
Mm.
happens? What if I stop obsessing about sort of hitting a certain length?
Mm.
And then so that's I mean, and then to some extent that's what happened with this with the subtle art of folding space was okay. No, I mean it's kind of funny. The other thing that I joke about is that one of the reasons why it was based on whole time violations was because there was just this pile of stuff that never made it into the short story,
Mm.
which like amusingly also didn't make it into the novel. Because by the time I realized what the novel was about, none of that stuff was like I was telling a different story, so none of that stuff was appropriate. But like I said, the thing that I'm sort of constantly learning is okay, well, what decisions will make this a better story and then to not worry too hard about length until I have to.
Mm. Nice. Well, I am very excited to see the next novel, and I appreciate you so much taking the time out of your schedule to talk about this one with us. Yeah, it's an absolutely lovely read. I'm going to, go home in 2 hours and finish it with a nice cup of coffee. So thank you for that. And yeah, it's been lovely.
No, thank you very much for interviewing me.
You're very welcome. Listeners, please check out The Subtle Art of Folding Space. It will be available as of the time that you hear this, so head to your favorite bookstore or library or website, wherever you like to go for your books. All right, we'll see you next time. It is time to close this chapter. We'll see you.
It's time to close this chapter of Turn the Page. Join us for the next episode.